New Mexico Territory, 1883. Lena Marrow stumbled through the shale at the edge of Canyon Ridge, dragging two terrified children behind her as the Red Knives horses thundered closer. Ruth sobbed, Jonah tripped, and Lena's own breath tore in her chest like broken glass. Rogan's voice carried through the dusk, violent, slurred, promising she wouldn't see another sunrise. A bullet cracked past her ear, and for one terrible heartbeat she thought, maybe no one is ever coming for us. Before we continue, if you're watching this from anywhere in the world, leave your city name in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Lena Marrow didn't remember the moment daylight died. One blink it was there, pink and gold on the rocks, and the next she was stumbling through the narrowing dusk with Ruth on one hand, Jonah on the other, her heart thundering like a stampede she couldn't outrun. "Keep close, babies," she whispered, though her voice shook so hard it barely made a sound. Behind them, somewhere past the crooked ridge line, the Red Knives were coming. She could feel it in the ground, could taste it in the dust. Rogan Marrow's voice carried farther than any man's deserved to, cruel and slurred and hungry. "Lena," he shouted into the dying light, "you ain't getting far. You belong to me. You and the secrets you stole." The words sliced down her back like a blade. She pulled the children faster, lungs burning, legs trembling. Ruth tripped on a rock, crying out, and Lena dropped to her knees to shield the girl, knowing full well she couldn't shield her from much. "Keep moving," she begged herself. "Don't stop now. Don't you dare stop." But her body had reached its edge. Her breath came ragged. Her arm bled freely where she'd torn it earlier on barbed wire. Jonah clung to her shirt like it was the last safe thing left in the world. A sound rolled across the canyon floor then. Hooves, one set, steady, not rushing, not wild, different. That alone terrified her more. Rogan's men rode sloppy, drunk, careless. This one moved with purpose. Ruth whimpered, hiding her face. Jonah whispered, "He found us. Mama Lena, he found us." "Not yet," Lena answered, though she felt far from certain. She turned, one arm circling the children behind her. Her boots slipped in the dust. The canyon walls pressed in on both sides, turning the twilight into a narrow throat of shadow. And through that shadow came a lone rider, tall in the saddle, broad, coat flapping behind him in the wind. Too calm, too silent. "Get behind me," she breathed. "If he tries anything, you run. Don't wait for me." The rider pulled his horse to a halt a few yards away, the animal breathing soft clouds into the cooling air. The man didn't reach for his gun, didn't bark a threat. He simply sat there, looking down at her with eyes she couldn't make out, but somehow felt. Steady, collected, watchful. "You're hurt," he said, voice low and rough, but not unkind. "Kids are scared. You running from someone?" Lena's whole body clenched. "Don't come closer." "Ain't planning to." He lifted one hand just slightly, a gesture meant to calm a skittish creature. "My name's Isaiah Cole. My ranch is east of here. I heard yelling up the ridge. Sounded like a woman being hunted. Her breath caught. Nobody ever said things plain like that. Nobody ever called what Rogan did hunting. They called it discipline, debt, law. "Who sent you?" she asked, clutching the children tighter. "No one sent me." Isaiah's voice dipped even gentler. "I just came." The honesty in it pierced something soft inside her, something she'd been trying to kill for years. Faith, hope, trust. She didn't want to feel any of it, but he'd said it like fact, not promise. Behind them, the wind carried a familiar echo, Rogan's howl of frustration. Closer now. Isaiah heard it too. His jaw tightened. "Whoever's chasing you, they ain't far. You three won't make another mile on foot." He dismounted, slow and deliberate, hands open at his sides. Lena tensed, but he kept distance between them, stopping several steps away. "Let me help you up," he said quietly. "I ain't pulling a weapon. I ain't laying a hand on you unless you agree. But those kids, they need safety more than they need pride." Lena felt her eyes sting. Pride. Yes, pride was all she had left. But Jonah was trembling, small fingers locked in hers. Ruth's cheek was streaked with dirt and fear. And Lena knew, God, she knew, they were seconds from being caught. "I don't know you," she whispered. "You don't have to," Isaiah replied. "Just know this. I won't let harm touch a child. Not ever again." There was something weighted in those words, something that hurt him to speak. She didn't know what. She didn't have time to ask. The distant hooves grew louder. Lena swallowed, wiped her face with the back of her shaking hand, and nodded once. "The kids go first." Isaiah moved gently, lifting Ruth and Jonah into the saddle with surprising tenderness, as if every motion mattered. Then he turned to her. "You ready?" She wasn't. Not for this moment. Not for trusting a stranger. Not for the sliver of something warm rising inside her, despite every warning her heart screamed. But she nodded. "Yes." Isaiah swung her up behind the children, steadying her without gripping. Then he mounted, clicked his tongue, and the horse surged into motion, away from Rogan's rage, away from death's shadow, into the unknown. For the first time all night, Lena let her eyes close. Someone had come. And that changed everything. Isaiah Cole rode through the dark with the steadiness of a man who'd crossed these trails 1,000 times. But tonight felt different. Tonight, there were 3 extra heartbeats pressed close behind him. One anxious, one trembling, and one trying its hardest to stay brave. Lena held on to the children more than she held on to him, but he felt her breath on his back, uneven and exhausted, like every inhale was borrowed time. "You're safe for now," he said over his shoulder, voice deep enough to settle nerves without trying to charm them. Lena didn't answer. He didn't blame her. A woman running for her life didn't owe him trust. Cole's Landing came into view as a dim cluster of lanterns and shadowed fences. Not much. A 2-room cabin, a weathered barn, a patch of corral land. But it was his. and for the first time in years, he felt strange about bringing someone into it. Like opening the front door meant opening parts of himself he'd locked tight. He helped the kids down first. Ruth clung to his coat sleeve, not quite knowing if she should be afraid. Jonah stared up at him with those hollow, wide-set eyes children get when they've seen too much. Isaiah crouched to meet them level. "You two want water or a warm blanket first?" he asked gently. Ruth pointed at Jonah. "He's cold," she said in a tiny voice. "Then warm blanket it is." He led them inside toward the low-burning stove. The cabin smelled of wood smoke, iron, and the stew he'd left simmering. Nothing fancy, but warm, real. Lena stood in the doorway, unsure whether to step in or bolt. Isaiah saw it, the way her muscles stayed tight, ready for danger, the way her eyes scanned every corner before entering, the kind of vigilance you didn't learn unless life had punished you for letting it slip. "You're free to leave the door open," he said softly. "I won't close it unless you ask me to." Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, confusion, a tiny breath of relief she tried hard to hide. She stepped inside. He pulled an old wool blanket from the crate under his bed and wrapped it around Jonah's shoulders. The boy leaned into it like someone starved for warmth. Lena finally spoke, her voice still hoarse from running. Why are you helping us?" Isaiah paused, fingers tightening around the ladle as he stirred the stew. It was a fair question, a dangerous one. "Because you needed help," he answered. "And no one should scream like you did back on that ridge." Lena blinked. She didn't remember screaming. Maybe she had. Maybe fear had torn it out of her without permission. She sank into the nearest chair, her whole body folding as if it had run out of strength to pretend boldness. Her sleeve was soaked with dried blood. Her skin looked chalky, lips trembling. "You're hurt," Isaiah said, crossing to her. "Let me look at that arm." "No," she said quickly, pulling back. "I can handle it." "I don't doubt that," he murmured. "But you don't have to handle it alone." Those last words hung between them like fragile truth. He didn't touch her until she nodded. When he finally rolled up her sleeve, she sucked in a sharp breath. The gash was ugly, deep, raw, angry from dirt and fear. "Hold still," Isaiah said, grabbing a clean cloth and the little tin of salve he kept for horse cuts and his own past mistakes. "This'll sting." "It already stings," she whispered. "That's so." A faint smile tugged at his mouth. "Then I won't make it worse." He cleaned the wound, slow and cautious. Her hands shook. She watched him as if expecting a sudden shift, a hidden danger. He didn't give her one. When he wrapped her arm in fresh linen, he tied the knot neatly. "You're patched up," he said, stepping back. "Sit as long as you need. Kids can rest by the fire." Jonah had already curled into a ball, blanket tucked to his chin. Ruth was fighting sleep, her small head drooping against Lena's side. Isaiah set 3 bowls of stew on the table. Lena stared at them as though unsure what kindness was supposed to look like. "You don't have to trust me," he said, sitting across from her, not too close. "But you can eat." Lena touched the bowl, fingers trembling. It's been a long time since anyone fed us without wanting something. I don't want anything. He paused, then added quietly, except maybe for you not to run back out into the dark. Her breath caught, soft, pained. You're safe here, he said again, voice a low promise he shouldn't have made but did anyway. And that was when it happened. Not a spoken thing, not a dramatic one. Just Lena finally letting her shoulders drop. Just a fraction. Just enough to show she'd allowed herself one tiny, fragile moment of rest. Isaiah looked at her, at the two children asleep by her side, and something old and wounded inside him stirred. A memory, a vow, a regret he'd carried too long. Not tonight, he told himself. Not yet. But he knew, even if she didn't, that tonight was the first night in a long, long time that none of them slept alone. Morning came to Cole's Landing soft and pale, slipping through the cracks in the shutters like it was afraid to wake anyone too suddenly. Lena stirred first. Her body ached as if she'd slept on stone, not a real mattress. But the warmth of Ruth and Jonah curled beside her pulled something inside her loose, something dangerously close to peace. She wasn't used to waking up without dread tightening her ribs. For a long moment she simply lay there, listening. The pop of the stove, the scrape of boots outside, the murmured hum of a man talking low to a horse. Isaiah Cole. His voice had that solid weight to it, steady, grounded, the kind of voice that didn't shake even when the world did. Ruth blinked awake and whispered, Mama Lena, are we still safe? Lena brushed a curl from the girl's cheek. For now, honey, just breathe. When they finally stepped outside, Jonah clutching the newly mended blanket, Isaiah was leading a chestnut mare from the barn. Dust settled around him like it respected his space. He gave them a small nod, not overly friendly, not distant either. Mornin', he said, tying the lead rope. Kids sleep all right? Ruth hid behind Lena. Jonah stared openly. They slept, Lena answered, her voice still guarded. You didn't have to do all this. Isaiah shrugged, grabbing a bucket. Wasn't gonna leave you in danger. Breakfast is on the stove if you want it. That simple offer tightened her throat. Softness was harder to swallow than fear. May Saunders, Isaiah's nearest neighbor, a stout woman with a warm smile and sharper instincts than any lawman, showed up not long after, balancing a plate of biscuits in one hand and gossip in the other. Heard some yelling up by Canyon Ridge last night, May said, eyes flicking between Lena and the children. Isaiah here bring home strays again? Isaiah muttered, May. Oh, hush, she said, grinning wide. Then, softer to Lena, you're safe here, sweetheart. This ranch has got good bones. Lena didn't know how to reply. Compliments felt like traps. Ruth tugged May's sleeve. Can we help with the horses? Isaiah glanced down at the girl. You got gentle hands? She nodded seriously. Well then, he said, let's put 'em to work. Ruth beamed for the first time in days. Jonah followed her into the corral, trailing Isaiah like a tiny shadow. Lena stood at the fence, arms wrapped around herself, watching her children, no, not hers by blood, but hers by promise, laugh for the first time since the fire. It broke her in a different way. Isaiah came up beside her, leaning on the fence post. "They're good kids," he said. "Smart." "They deserve better than what they've had," Lena murmured. "What about you?" She stiffened. "What about me?" "You deserve better, too." She looked away quickly. Compliments again. Knives in disguise. Isaiah seemed to sense the tension tightening her shoulders. He didn't push, just stepped back a little, giving her space. "Cold out," he said, shrugging off his coat and holding it out. "Take it." "I'm fine." "You're shivering." "It's nothing." "It ain't." His voice softened. "Let me help." There was no force in the gesture, no expectation, just steadiness. That was somehow worse. She reached out slowly, fingers brushing his coat. For a heartbeat, their hands nearly touched, and she felt heat shoot up her arm like a warning. She pulled back too fast, swallowing hard. "I don't want to owe you," she whispered. "You don't," he said simply. The gentleness in his tone nearly undid her. She turned away, pretending to watch the kids. Isaiah stayed where he was, silent but present, a mountain choosing not to move. Later, as the sun tilted toward noon, the children chased a chicken across the yard, shrieking with laughter. Lena watched from the porch, a strange ache filling her chest. Maybe we can stop running, she dared to think. Maybe, just for a little while. But when she glanced toward the horizon, she caught Isaiah studying the same distance, jaw tight, eyes shadowed with something he didn't say. He sensed danger still coming. She sensed it too. But for this moment, this fragile sliver of morning, they let themselves pretend the world outside Cole's Landing didn't exist. The children laughed. May fussed at the stove. Isaiah repaired a broken stirrup with his sleeves rolled up, forearms strong and dusted with sunlight. And Lena, who had lived most of her life waiting for the next blow, felt the first true flicker of something she barely recognized. Hope. It scared her more than anything. By late afternoon, the quiet at Cole's Landing had grown so warm, so strangely gentle, that Lena almost forgot the world was still hunting her. Ruth and Jonah napped on a quilt near the hearth. Isaiah was outside splitting wood with the kind of steady rhythm that made the world feel anchored. Lena sat at the table, stitching Jonah's torn sleeve. The moment felt too peaceful, like the kind of calm that came right before trouble, and trouble arrived on horseback. A single rider approached up the dusty trail, his silhouette sharp against the lowering sun. Isaiah looked up the moment he heard the saddle creak, shoulders tensing. "That ain't a neighbor," he muttered, setting the axe aside. Lena stepped out onto the porch just as the rider pulled up. The man dismounted with the smooth confidence of someone who believed every inch of land belonged to him. Dark coat, polished boots, silver badge on his lapel. Not the sheriff's, but something higher, more dangerous. "Judge Porter Claiborne," Isaiah said stiffly, not offering a hand. "Didn't expect to see you this far from Dustwater." Afternoon, Cole, Claiborne drawled. His smile was thin and practiced. Got word someone stole livestock last night near Canyon Ridge. Thought I'd see if the trail led out this way. Lena's pulse thudded. Isaiah didn't move closer to her, but the shift of his stance, just half a step, placed himself between her and the judge. No stolen horses here, Isaiah said. Just me and mine. Claiborne's gaze slid past Isaiah and landed on Lena, lingering, assessing. The kind of look that stripped away the surface and groped for weakness underneath. And who might this be? He asked. Lena's throat tightened. Just passing through. Claiborne's eyes gleamed as if he'd heard a confession. Passing through with two little ones? Dangerous country for that. Where's your husband? Lena stiffened. Don't have one. How unfortunate, Claiborne murmured. For a woman alone. Isaiah stepped in, his voice iron flat. She's under my roof. That's all anyone needs to know. Claiborne raised both hands in mock surrender. No offense meant. Just doing my duty. His gaze drifted again, to the bracelet peeking from Lena's sleeve. A thin band of silver, bent slightly out of shape, but etched with one unmistakable symbol, a 5-pointed desert star. Claiborne's expression sharpened like a blade catching light. That's a mighty curious trinket you've got there, he said softly. Lena instinctively pulled her sleeve down. It's nothing. Nothing? Claiborne tilted his head. Funny thing. I've only ever seen that symbol on land deeds out west. Old families, old claims. Some folks would kill to get their hands on one. Her breath hitched. It was a gift. Claiborne stepped closer, not touching, but invading in a way that felt like fingertips on her throat. Be careful with keepsakes, miss. Marrow, Isaiah cut in, voice deep enough to stop a rattler. Claiborne's eyes flicked to him. Miss Marrow. Well, items like that tend to bring more trouble than comfort. He mounted his horse, still watching Lena with that slow, predatory curiosity. Wouldn't want you dying over something so small. The threat wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Isaiah's jaw clenched. You done here? For now. Claiborne tapped his hat. Y'all stay safe. Storm coming through tonight. He rode off at an easy pace like a man who had all the time in the world to break whatever he chose. Lena exhaled only when he disappeared past the tree line. Her knees almost buckled. Isaiah turned to her, eyes burning with questions he didn't ask. Not yet. You all right? He murmured. No, but she nodded anyway. He knew that symbol, she whispered. Yeah, Isaiah said quietly. He did. She wrapped her arms around herself, trembling. He wasn't asking about horses. No, Isaiah agreed. He wasn't. Inside the cabin, Jonah stirred at the sound of voices. Ruth sat up, rubbing her eyes. Seeing their sleepy faces twisted something in Lena's chest. Whatever Claiborne wanted, it involved them. It involved that bracelet. It involved secrets she'd been running from long before last night. Isaiah watched her carefully, the lines around his eyes deepening. He wasn't a man of many words, but he didn't need them. He looked like someone preparing to shield her from something he didn't yet understand, but already feared. The warmth from earlier, soft, tentative, fell away, replaced by a cold truth settling over the ranch. Trouble had found them, and it wasn't done. Isaiah barely slept that night. The judge's visit had dug an old wound open, one he'd buried under years of silence. He paced the porch long after the lamps dimmed, listening to the boards creak under his boots, feeling the air shift in that way it does when danger is riding in. Inside, Lena pretended to sleep. Truth was, every time she closed her eyes, she saw Claiborne stare, cool as a snake in shade, sliding over that bent silver bracelet like he already owned it, like he already owned her. The children clung to her on the straw mattress, and she wrapped her arms around them, whispering silent promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "We'll run if we have to. We'll survive again. I won't let them take you." But dawn brought more than sunlight. It brought horses, multiple sets, fast ones. Isaiah heard them before anyone else. His hand closed around the handle of his axe, not a gun, but solid enough to break bone if he needed it to. He stepped out into the yard, feet planted, breath steady in a way that meant he was anything but calm. Lena rushed out behind him, gripping Jonah and Ruth's hands. The children started to cry the moment dust clouds rose over the horizon. Rogan Marrow appeared first, drunk, furious, swaggering in the saddle like a man whose ego outweighed his sense. Behind him rode 4 men with red bandanas tied around their arms. The red knives. They fanned out in an arc, blocking the road, blocking escape. "Isaiah," Lena whispered, feeling her stomach cave in. "We have to run." "No," he said, voice cold and certain. "Running won't buy you anything today." Rogan reined in so sharply, his horse snorted. His eyes gleamed when he saw Lena, like he'd found something he'd misplaced and was delighted to steal back. "There she is," Rogan drawled. "My runaway little wife." "I'm not your wife," Lena shot back, shaking but fierce. "I never was." "That ain't what the papers say." He grinned, flashing yellow teeth. "You took something from me, sweetheart. Something valuable." Jonah hid behind Lena's skirt. Ruth whimpered, "Don't let him take us." Rogan leaned forward in his saddle. "Those kids belong to me. They were left with me. I fed 'em, housed 'em. You used them," Lena spat. Isaiah stepped forward, planting himself directly between Lena and Rogan. His voice dropped to a dangerously even register. "You're trespassing. State your business and leave." Rogan laughed. "Look at this. A noble cowboy playing guardian." He nudged his horse closer. "I'm taking the woman and the brats. She ran. I'm here to collect." Before Isaiah could respond, another rider approached from the tree line. Slow, deliberate, calculated. Judge Claiborne. He dismounted, brushing imaginary dust from his sleeves. "Morning, folks. Seems there's a dispute over property." Lena's heart iced over. Claiborne's voice was smooth, almost polite, but the threat underneath was sharp enough to cut. "These children," Claiborne said, "are under suspicion regarding how shall I say, Missing legal matter tied to their former homestead. Miss Marrow must accompany me to Dustwater to answer questions. Isaiah's grip tightened on the axe. She ain't going anywhere with you. Claiborne studied him with cold interest. Careful, Cole. Harboring a fugitive is considered obstruction. She's not a fugitive, Isaiah snapped. Claiborne shrugged. Depends on who tells the story. Jonah began to cry. Ruth clung to Lena's waist. Rogan lifted his pistol lazily. Judge, don't you fret. I'll take my family home myself. Lena stepped backward, trembling. I'm not yours. I'm not any man's property. Claiborne's lip twitched, amusement mixed with disdain. We'll see what the law says. The world narrowed into a thin, breathless thread. Isaiah stepped in front of Lena again, blocking Claiborne's gaze, blocking Rogan's reach, blocking the past that was coming to reclaim her. Last warning, he said, voice low as thunder rolling across plains. Turn around. Rogan smirked. Or what? You'll swing that axe at me? You don't scare me, Cole. Something flickered in Isaiah's eyes. Old pain, old guilt, old rage. You should be scared, he murmured. Rogan cocked his gun. Isaiah didn't blink. Claiborne raised a hand. Gentlemen, let's not be hasty. Nobody needs to get shot today. But his eyes betrayed him. He hoped someone would. He needed chaos to muddy the truth he was chasing. Lena felt the weight of every mistake, every secret, every danger closing around her. Her breath came shallow. Isaiah, what do we do? We hold ground, he said softly, without turning. You're not going with them. Rogan spat. You got 5 seconds, girl. Come here or we take you. Isaiah lifted the axe, steady and ready. Rogan raised his gun. Claiborne's fingers twitched near his coat pocket, and Lena realized the truth. Peace at Cole's Landing had ended. The world had found them again, and it meant to take everything. They stood deadlocked in the yard, Rogan snarling, Claiborne watching like a vulture waiting for first blood. Isaiah braced like a wall carved from the earth itself. The children clung to Lena, sobbing softly into her skirt. Something inside her finally snapped. No more, she whispered. Then louder. No more of you deciding what happens to us. Rogan barked a laugh. You ain't got choices, girl. But Lena stepped out from behind Isaiah, only by a foot, but enough to make both men tense. You want the truth? She said hoarsely. Fine. I'll tell it. Isaiah turned slightly, eyes flashing with worry. Lena, it's time, she cut in. I'm done hiding. Claiborne folded his arms, intrigued. Rogan smirked, thinking he'd won. The red knives leaned forward in their saddles. Lena took a shaky breath. Ruth and Jonah aren't mine. Not by blood. Rogan spat. Course they ain't. You stole 'em. Lena ignored him. She dropped to her knees so she was level with the children, brushing their tangled hair back with trembling fingers. They belonged to a couple who lived out past the dry creek bend. Good people. Quiet. They kept to themselves because they were afraid. Afraid of what? Isaiah asked softly. Of men in uniforms, she whispered. Of men who said their land wasn't theirs. That someone more powerful wanted it. Claiborne's expression sharpened. Careful, Miss Marrow. But she wasn't afraid now. Not of him, not anymore. One night, she continued, that couple heard horses, thought it was thieves. But it wasn't. It was a raid. Organized. Efficient. Not some bandits. Someone who knew where their deed was kept. Isaiah's breath hitched, sharp, involuntary. Lena swallowed hard. I was visiting them. They were my only friends left. When the shooting started, the mother, she shoved this into my hand. She pulled the silver bracelet from her pocket, the one Claiborne had recognized. The metal glittered faintly, its desert star engraving catching the light. Isaiah went rigid. She said it was proof, Lena whispered. Said I had to protect it. Protect the children. Said powerful men were coming for their land, and they'd kill anyone who stood in the way. Claiborne's jaw tightened. You're making dangerous accusations. I haven't named anyone, Lena shot back. Not yet. Isaiah stepped closer to the bracelet, as if drawn by a force he couldn't resist. His hands shook, just barely, but enough for Lena to notice. Where, exactly, was this? He asked, voice thin. Near the old Surveyor's Ridge, Lena said. The cabin with the blue shutters. Isaiah's eyes slammed shut. Because he knew that place. He knew that night. He'd spent years trying to bury the memory under miles of silence. Lena looked up at him. Isaiah, what is it? But he couldn't speak. The world tilted slightly, as if the earth recognized the weight of what was coming. You all right, Cole? Claiborne asked, mock concern dripping from his voice. Isaiah finally forced himself to look at Lena. His face wasn't calm anymore. It wasn't guarded. It was shattered. Lena, he whispered. I've seen that symbol before. Her breath caught. Where? Isaiah swallowed, every muscle in his jaw trembling. On papers, on uniforms, on crates we were told to guard. Rogan frowned. What are you babbling about? Isaiah ignored him. He took another step toward Lena, eyes haunted. That night, the night the cabin burned, I was there. Everything froze. Ruth clung to Lena's sleeve. Jonah whimpered. Lena stared at Isaiah, blood draining from her face. You... what? I wasn't the one shootin', Isaiah said quickly, desperately. But I rode with a unit that followed orders. I thought we were reclaimin' stolen land. They told us it was legal, that the family was violent. But when we got there, his voice broke. They weren't. They weren't at all. Claiborne smirked, enjoying every flicker of pain on their faces. Rogan snorted. So the black cowboy ain't a saint after all. Isaiah turned sharply. Shut your mouth. Or what? Rogan sneered. You gonna confess you helped kill those brats' parents? Isaiah staggered like the accusation was a punch. I didn't know. God, Lena, I swear. I didn't know until you showed me that bracelet. Lena's heart twisted sharply, violently. She had trusted him. She had breathed under his roof. She had let her guard fall, just a little. And all along, he'd been part of the nightmare she'd run from. I didn't fire a shot, Isaiah whispered. But I didn't stop it either. And I've lived with that every day since. Lena backed away. Don't come near me. Rogan laughed cruelly. Claiborne's eyes glinted like he'd been waiting for exactly this fracture. Isaiah's voice cracked. Lena, please, let me explain. But she was shaking so hard her hands went numb. You were there. You. All this time you knew something. And you didn't tell me. I didn't know it was you, Isaiah whispered. Not until now. The truth landed like a hammer blow. The man who'd saved her was tied to the men who'd destroyed her world. And somewhere deep in the pine ridges, the wind carried the echo of what would come next. Nothing would ever be the same. The air at Cole's Landing turned heavy, thick, almost too dense to breathe. Lena couldn't look at Isaiah. Every time her eyes brushed his direction, the canyon of betrayal yawned wider. The children trembled at her legs. Rogan gloated. Claiborne watched with the slow satisfaction of a man who'd waited years for the perfect crack in the dam. You all right there, Miss Marrow? Claiborne asked, voice smooth as polished stone. Truth can hit harder than bullets. Isaiah stepped forward, but Lena flinched so hard he froze mid-reach. Don't, she whispered. Don't touch me. Something in Isaiah's chest caved at those words. He lowered his hand, swallowing pain like broken glass. Rogan clapped sarcastically. Oh, look at that. Heartbreak on the homestead. Isaiah shot him a look that could split timber, but Lena's trembling distracted him more. He tried again, voice barely a rasp. Lena, I need you to hear me. But Claiborne cut in smoothly. Actually, Miss Marrow, I think you need a moment away from all this anger. He gestured toward his horse. Ride into town with me. We'll talk legal protection, safety, paperwork. Like hell she will, Isaiah growled. Claiborne ignored him. You want those children protected, don't you? Dustwater's got proper doors and deputies. This ranch does not. Lena looked down at Ruth and Jonah. Their faces were small, pale, frightened. Dustwater did sound safer, far from Rogan, far from gun barrels pointed at them. Lena, Isaiah murmured, stepping closer. Don't go with him. Not alone. You kept secrets from me, she said, voice breaking. Big ones. And I was wrong, he said fiercely. But he ain't saving you. He wants something. He always has. Claiborne smiled thinly. Miss Marrow, if you'd like the truth without all this noise, come with me. Just you. The temptation slid into Lena like a cold blade. Answers, protection, distance from Isaiah's shattered confession. She made the mistake of hesitating. Claiborne saw it and struck. 5 minutes, she whispered. Just 5. I want to hear what you have to say. Isaiah's breath left him as though someone had shot him. Lena. No. But she stepped toward Claiborne anyway. The judge offered his hand. Not touching, just guiding. This way. Jonah whimpered, clinging to her skirt. She knelt. I'll be right back, she whispered, stroking his cheek. Stay with Isaiah. But Mama Lena, Jonah sobbed. I'll be back, she repeated, though a dread she didn't understand clawed at her ribs. She pried the boy's fingers loose and rose. Isaiah tried one last time. Lena, please, don't let him take you. Her eyes glistened. I'm not yours to keep, Isaiah. He staggered as if the words hit harder than a fist. Claiborne mounted up, offering her the reins of a spare horse. Come, before more trouble finds you. Lena rode with him down the trail, the ranch shrinking behind her. Isaiah's silhouette frozen like a man losing something precious he'd never dared ask for. When they disappeared into the tree line, Isaiah finally moved. Slowly, stiffly, like a man walking through fire. He turned toward the children. You two stay close, he murmured. Inside now. Ruth glanced at the trail Lena had taken. Is Mama Lena coming back? Isaiah forced himself to nod. She will. He didn't believe it. Not yet. Not with Claiborne's shadow stretching long behind her. He ushered the children inside, scanning every window, every tree, every dark place danger could hide. His breath was raw, his pulse hammered. He'd failed once before. He would not fail again. But when he stepped into the main room, it was empty. His heart stopped. Ruth? Jonah? Silence. His boots pounded across the floorboards. The back door swung in the wind. Broken. Splinters everywhere. The blanket Jonah had been wrapped in lay abandoned on the ground. No, Isaiah breathed, voice cracking. No, no. He saw the tracks then. Boot prints, drag marks, a scuffle, and on a fence post, a torn red bandana fluttering like a taunt. The red knives had doubled back. They'd waited until he was distracted, until Lena was gone, and taken the children. Isaiah grabbed the fence rail so hard it splintered under his grip. A memory roared up from his past. Smoke. Screams. A cabin burning. A mother begging as soldiers pulled her children away. His own voice, years younger, whispering, I didn't know. I didn't know. He dropped to his knees, not in weakness, in agony. He had sworn he'd never let children suffer again. He had sworn he would protect these two. He had sworn, and he had failed them. His voice tore from him, ragged and raw. Ruth! Jonah! No answer. Only wind. Isaiah's grief darkened into something sharper, something lethal. Claiborne had taken Lena away on purpose, to leave the ranch unguarded, to let the red knives strike. and Isaiah Cole felt a fury he had buried for years ignite deep in his chest. He rose slowly, like a man assembling himself bone by bone. "I'm coming for you," he whispered into the wind. "I swear it on my life. I'm coming." For the first time since that night years ago, Isaiah didn't run from the past. He chased it. Claiborne led Lena deeper into the hills, farther from Cole's Landing than she realized. The trail narrowed beneath the pine shadows, wind slicing through the trees with a whistle that set her nerves on edge. "You said we were going to Dustwater," Lena said, reins trembling in her hands. Claiborne didn't even look back. "Change of plans." Her stomach dropped. "Why?" He smiled over his shoulder, thin, serpent slick. "Didn't feel like the town needed to hear our conversation." That was when Lena saw it. A collapsed stone building ahead, half swallowed by vines and dust. The old frontier courthouse, abandoned after the fire 10 years back. No deputies, no law, no witnesses. Fear surged through her. "We're not going inside," Lena said sharply, pulling her horse to a stop. Claiborne turned his mount slowly. "Miss Marrow, you are in no position to negotiate." He dismounted, boots crushing weeds that had grown through the warped floorboards. He gestured for her to come. "Move," he said softly, "or I'll bring the boy who took your handprint off the table instead." Ruth. Jonah. A chill cut her clean through. She slid off the horse, heart pounding loud enough she could barely hear her own thoughts. Claiborne guided her into the empty hall, dust swirling in the slanted beams of light, broken pews scattered like bones. And then she saw them. Ruth and Jonah, tied to a pillar near the judge's bench, cheeks tear-streaked, wrists red from struggling. "Mama Lena," Ruth sobbed. Lena screamed, running to them, but Claiborne grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. "Not so fast." "Let them go," she cried. "They're children." "Children with a claim," Claiborne said. "And claims mean land. Land means power." He reached for her wrist and lifted the silver bracelet gently, like it was a sacred relic. "This symbol belongs to a deed signed before the territory changed hands," he murmured. "Your friend, those children's mother, tried to hide it. But land doesn't just disappear. It passes down." Lena's voice shook. "So you killed them?" Claiborne's smile curdled. "I ordered the land reclaimed. I set the law in motion. If someone got trigger-happy," he shrugged. "Collateral." Jonah sobbed harder. Lena fought against Claiborne's grip, rage pouring through her like wildfire. "You're a monster." "No," he corrected. "I'm a man who learned early that the law is only as moral as the man in charge." "And you're in charge?" Lena spat. Claiborne's eyes glowed cold. "I was, until you started running around with a man who knows too much." Her blood iced. "Isaiah?" Claiborne nodded toward the broken doors. A shadow appeared, tall, broad, moving fast. Isaiah Cole burst into the building like a storm, hair disheveled, face twisted with fury and fear. His hands were scraped raw from riding through brush. His shirt was ripped. His chest rose and fell, like every breath hurt. "Where are they?" he roared. Claiborne's grin spread slow and poisonous. "Right on time." Isaiah spotted Ruth and Jonah. Relief flashed across his face. Then horror, because Claiborne pulled a pistol from his coat and pressed the barrel to Ruth's temple. "Don't take another step," Claiborne warned. Isaiah froze. Lena felt her knees weaken. "Claiborne, please," she begged. "Let them go. This is between you and—" "It's between me and all of you," he snapped. "Especially him." He shoved Ruth aside just enough to point the gun at Isaiah. "You want to know why this man cares so much for your safety?" Claiborne asked softly. "Why he defends those children like they're his own damn blood? It's guilt." Isaiah's jaw flexed. "Don't." Claiborne turned to Lena with theatrical pity. "You never wondered why a man with such clean hands avoids his own reflection." Lena's heart pounded. "Stop." Claiborne spread his arms wide. "Miss Marrow, open your eyes. He was there the night the children's parents were killed." Lena shook her head violently. "No, he said he didn't shoot." "And maybe that's true," Claiborne said. "But he didn't intervene. Didn't stop us. He stood there while a family burned, and he walked away." Isaiah's voice broke. "Lena, I swear, you don't know what it was like. I tried—" "You did nothing!" Claiborne thundered. "And that makes you mine. Because guilt," he hissed, "is the strongest leash." Isaiah staggered as though the words punched breath from his lungs. "Lena, I'm sorry." Lena's vision blurred. The betrayal slammed into her chest with a force she couldn't withstand. "You were part of it," she whispered. "You were there." He reached for her, but she flinched like burned. "Lena, please." "Don't," she choked. "Don't touch me." Isaiah's hand dropped. He looked destroyed. Claiborne's grin widened. "See? Truth always breaks the weak." Isaiah's eyes darkened with something lethal. "You're wrong. Breaking makes you choose." Claiborne raised the gun again. "Then choose now. Whose death cleans the past?" Ruth screamed. Jonah sobbed. Lena trembled violently, and Isaiah Cole, for the first time, lowered his head, not in defeat, but in decision. Whatever came next wouldn't end quietly. The world exploded into motion. Claiborne fired again, the gunshot ricocheting through the ruined courthouse like thunder. Isaiah barely twisted aside in time. Splinters tore across his shoulder as the bullet smashed into the wall behind him. "Isaiah!" Lena screamed. He didn't answer. He was already charging forward. Claiborne swung the gun toward the children, using them like leverage. "Back off, Cole!" But Isaiah didn't back off. He plowed into Claiborne with a force born of fury and old guilt, sending them both crashing across the debris-strewn floor. The pistol skittered across the ground. "Ruth, Jonah, curl down, stay small," Lena shouted, sprinting to them. She dropped to her knees and began tearing at the knots binding Ruth's wrists. Her fingers were shaking so badly she could barely grip the rope. Claiborne slammed his fist into Isaiah's jaw. Isaiah grunted, blood flying from his lip, but he didn't fall. He hit back, raw and desperate, the kind of punches a man throws when he knows he has no right to fail again. "You should have stayed out of this, Cole," Claiborne spat, ducking another blow. "You owe me your silence." "I don't owe you nothin' anymore," Isaiah growled. Lena freed Ruth and spun to Jonah. "Hold still, baby. Almost there." Jonah whimpered. "Mama Lena, is he gonna kill us?" "No," she whispered fiercely. "Not while we're still breathing." Claiborne smashed Isaiah's head into a pillar. Isaiah staggered, vision blurring. Lena saw it, and rage lit her from the inside. "Isaiah, move!" she cried. She snatched a handful of sand and dust from the floor and hurled it straight into Claiborne's eyes. He shouted, recoiling, clawing at his face. "You little—" Isaiah seized the moment. He drove his fist into Claiborne's ribs, then his stomach, then his jaw, each hit fueled by years of regret. Claiborne stumbled backward, right toward Jonah. "No!" Lena screamed. She threw herself over Jonah just as Claiborne swung blind, catching her shoulder with a backhand that sent pain ripping down her arm. Isaiah roared, charging again. Claiborne fumbled wildly, grabbing a chunk of broken bench and swinging it at Isaiah's skull. Isaiah ducked just in time. The wood slammed into a beam instead, cracking it clean in half. Lena grabbed Jonah's hand and crawled behind the judge's bench. "Stay here! Don't move!" Ruth clung to her waist, trembling. Isaiah slammed Claiborne against the wall. "You don't get to hurt them!" Claiborne spat blood. "You think you're a hero? You were mine once, Cole. You followed orders. You let the cabin burn." Isaiah's face contorted, not with shame this time, but with something harder. Resolve. "Not anymore," he said. Claiborne lunged for the pistol lying near the broken podium. Isaiah dove after him, but the judge reached it first. He twisted, raising the barrel, and Lena moved. She didn't think, she didn't hesitate. She reached behind the bench, grabbed a fallen deputy's revolver, the metal cold and foreign in her hand, and fired. The shot cracked through the room. Claiborne screamed, dropping the gun and clutching his arm, blood spilling between his fingers. Isaiah froze, staring at her with shock, breath ragged. "Lena, finish it," she said, shaking, "before he gets another chance." Claiborne snarled, crawling toward the exit. "You think this is over? The land is mine. Those kids are mine." Isaiah kicked the pistol away and pinned him with a knee to the chest. "No," Isaiah said, voice low and lethal. "They belong to themselves, and you're done taking anything from anyone." Claiborne tried to spit a curse, but Isaiah's fist ended the fight. One final, crushing blow. Silence crashed down. Lena slumped to her knees, tears spilling freely now. Ruth flung her arms around her. Jonah sobbed into her chest. Isaiah staggered to them, clutching his ribs. "You all hurt? Tell me you're all right." Lena looked up at him. This broken, guilty, stubborn man who had fought like the world depended on it. "We're alive," she whispered. His shoulders sagged with relief so deep it nearly dropped him to the floor. Then Lena saw it, blood seeping through his shirt, the cut on his temple dripping steadily. "You're hurt," she breathed. "I've been hurt worse," Isaiah muttered, trying to laugh and failing miserably. Something inside her cracked open. She touched his face. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition. He leaned into the touch like a starving man offered water. "We need to get out of here," she whispered. "Yeah," he said softly, "but we're doing it together." She nodded once. For the first time since the nightmare began, they were united, not because wounds had healed, but because the truth was finally out. And now they had a choice: fight for each other or lose everything. Isaiah squeezed her hand gently. "Let's bring the truth home." Dustwater had never seen a crowd this big. Word spread faster than wildfire. Judge Claiborne captured. Children rescued. Isaiah Cole bringing the truth to town. By mid-morning, every rancher, shopkeeper, and drifter filled the wooden sidewalks and dusty street. Folks whispered, pointed, stared like they weren't sure whether they were witnessing justice or the start of a new war. Lena rode into town with Ruth pressed against her back and Jonah in front of her on the saddle. Isaiah walked beside the horse, leading it gently with one hand while the other held a rope tied around Claiborne's wrists. The fallen judge stumbled, cursing under his breath. People gasped. Claiborne had never been seen in chains. Sheriff Hopper pushed through the crowd, stunned. "Sweet Lord, Cole, what in God's name happened?" Isaiah's voice was steady. "The truth. And it's time Dustwater heard it." He pushed Claiborne forward into the center of the street. The judge, blood dried on his sleeve from Lena's shot, glared at everyone with cold fury. "You think you'll get away with this?" Claiborne snarled. "I am the law here." "No," Isaiah said quietly. "You perverted it." The sheriff lifted a brow. "Cole, you best explain." Isaiah took a deep breath, the kind that scraped at old scars. "Years ago," he began, voice carrying across the silent street, "I rode with a territorial enforcement unit. We were told to reclaim stolen land west of Surveyor's Ridge. We followed orders thinking we were doing right." He paused. Lena swallowed hard. She hadn't known how this would feel, standing here, hearing him say the words aloud, but she stood beside him anyway. Isaiah continued. "But the family living on that land weren't thieves, weren't violent, weren't nothing but decent people who had a deed Claiborne here wanted erased." Gasps swept the crowd. Claiborne spat. "You have no proof." Isaiah turned to Lena with gentle solemnity. "Show them." Lena's hand trembled, but she lifted the silver bracelet high. Light glinted off the Desert Star engraving. "This was given to me by the children's mother moments before she died," she said. "She said it proved rightful claim to their land. Claiborne knew. He sent men to wipe out the family to take it." A murmur rippled through the crowd, anger first, then disgust. A grizzled older man stepped forward, leaning on a cane. "That symbol, I know it. My brother served in the same unit." His face twisted with pain. "He told me they were ordered to burn out a family. He regretted it until the day he died." Claiborne glared. "This is slander." "No," the man said. This is truth. A woman from the mercantile stepped out, trembling. My cousin worked clerical for the district judge. She once said Claiborne had a secret land map in his office, marked with that same star. Another man added, We always wondered why Claiborne bought up half the water rights for pennies. Now we know. The crowd's mood shifted, anger turning into something sharp and righteous. Claiborne's voice cracked with desperation. You fools! I am the law! Sheriff Hopper stepped up, face carved from stone. Not anymore. He grabbed Claiborne by the collar and yanked him toward the jailhouse. The crowd parted, many spitting at the disgraced judge as he passed. Lena felt Ruth cling to her skirts. Jonah hid behind her leg. Isaiah looked at them, really looked. Not with guilt, but with something like awe. You saved them, Lena whispered to him. Even after everything. Isaiah shook his head gently. No, you saved them. You kept them alive. You protected the truth when no one else would. She swallowed, emotions tangled like barbed wire. You faced your past today. I had to. His voice softened. For them, and for you. Her breath caught. He looked so raw, so earnest, so damn vulnerable that her heart couldn't pretend not to feel it. The crowd began to disperse. Some folks approached with tears, with apologies, with handshakes for Isaiah. A few nodded respectfully to Lena. One rancher murmured, You're safe here, miss. No one's taken those kids again. For the first time since the fire, Lena believed it. Ruth tugged her sleeve. Mama Lena, can we stay here? Not run anymore? Lena knelt, brushing Ruth's cheek. If this town lets us stay, maybe we will. Isaiah watched her, hope flickering behind the exhaustion. You all come back with me to Cole's Landing, he said softly. Rest. Heal. The ranch is yours, as long as you want it. Lena hesitated, not because she didn't want to go, but because her heart, still tender and bruised, didn't know if she was ready for what came next. Isaiah must have seen the fear in her eyes, because his voice gentled even more. I ain't asking for forgiveness, he said. Not yet. I'm just asking to walk beside you, if you'll let me. Her lips parted. Words failed. Because for the first time, the weight between them didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a bridge. She gave a small nod. One step at a time. Isaiah smiled, soft, relieved, quietly grateful. One step, he echoed. And with dust water behind them and justice finally spoken aloud, healing, real healing, began. 3 months had passed since Dustwater rose up against Claiborne, and Cole's Landing didn't feel like the same lonely patch of earth anymore. The ranch had a heartbeat now, quiet, steady, warm, as if the land finally recognized those who lived on it. Isaiah Cole stood on a ladder beneath the new entryway, carving the final lines into the wooden gate. Ruth and Jonah hovered on each side of him, helping with tiny chisels that barely dented the wood. Still, Isaiah let them try, patient as ever. Lena watched from a few steps away, her chest tightening at the sight. Family, she realized, didn't always form from blood. Sometimes it formed from the hands willing to carve a future for you. Isaiah stepped back, wiping sawdust off his palms. "What do you two think?" Ruth grinned. Jonah nodded seriously, as if inspecting a great work of art. Carved into the center of the archway was a desert star, the same symbol once tied to tragedy. Now it crowned their door like a blessing. "Looks like home," Jonah whispered. Lena pressed a hand over her heart. "It does." The wind brushed her hair, carrying the scent of fresh-cut pine. Isaiah glanced her way. His smile was small but uncertain, like a man wanting to step forward but afraid he'd scare off the very thing he cherished. "You want to say a few words?" he asked. "Me?" She laughed, shaking her head. "I'm no good with speeches." Isaiah shrugged. "Just speak honest." Honesty still frightened her. But here, under this star she once feared, she found the courage. She walked to the gate, Ruth and Jonah trailing her with the river stones they'd chosen from the creek. "When we first came here," she began, touching the warm wood, "I thought this was just a place to hide, a roof for a few nights." Isaiah watched her like every word mattered. "But this ranch," her voice quivered, "became something else. It became the first place the kids slept without fear, and the first place I felt seen." Jonah leaned against her leg. Ruth slipped her hand into Lena's. Lena knelt, placing her river stone at the base of the gate. Ruth and Jonah placed theirs beside it. "This means we belong here," Ruth whispered. Isaiah's voice softened. "Means you'll always find your way back." Lena blinked rapidly, tears threatening. "I think we already have." Isaiah stepped forward, rubbing his hands on his jeans, nervous, vulnerable. "Lena," he said slowly, "you've been here long enough to walk away if you wanted." His voice cracked. "So I need to ask, are you staying? Not 'cause you have to, because you want to." Lena swallowed hard, feeling the full weight of the question. She looked at the children, safe at last, then at the man who had fought for them like his soul depended on it. She stepped closer. "You once said you'd never let harm touch a child again." Isaiah nodded. "I meant every word." "I know," she whispered. "And this place, it's the safest I've ever been." His breath caught. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver bracelet, the one tied to her past, the one Claiborne nearly killed for. Only now, it felt different. Quietly, she slipped it onto her wrist. Isaiah stared. "You kept it?" "Yes," she said, lifting her arm so the sun lit the restored metal. "Because it used to remind me of everything I lost. But now, it reminds me of what we're building." He touched the bracelet gently. "I hammered it back into shape for you." "And you helped hammer me back too," she murmured. Isaiah's laugh came rough, shaky. "Lena, I didn't fix you. You did that yourself. I just stood with you while you fought." Then keep standing with me, she whispered. He cupped her cheek, eyes full of quiet awe. Always. Ruth tugged Lena's skirt. Mama Lena, are we a family now? Lena turned to Isaiah. He nodded, slow, certain. Yes, baby, Lena said, lifting Ruth into her arms. We are. Jonah wrapped himself around Isaiah's leg. Papa Cole? Isaiah froze, a lifetime of loneliness cracking open. You can call me that, he whispered. If you want. I want to. Isaiah scooped him into his arms, holding the boy tight, whispering something only Jonah could hear. Something soft, full of wonder. Lena stepped beneath the archway. Isaiah joined her, carrying Jonah. Ruth clung to Lena's hand. The four of them stood together before the Desert Star Gate, rebuilt, reclaimed, and shining in the afternoon light. Isaiah reached for Lena's hand. Their fingers threaded easily, like they had been meant to fit all along. Lena breathed one word, soft as a prayer. Home. Isaiah kissed her forehead. Yeah, he murmured, voice trembling with something close to joy. Home. They stepped through the gate as one family, chosen, healed, and finally free. And that, my friends, is how a frightened woman, a quiet black rancher, and two lost children found the kind of home folks spend a lifetime searching for. If this story touched your heart even a little, I'd truly appreciate a like. And if you'd enjoy more gentle Western tales like this, feel free to subscribe so you don't miss the next ride. I'd love to hear from you too. Share a memory, a thought, or simply where you're watching from. Your stories matter here. Thanks for spending this time with me, and may peace and warmth follow you wherever the trail leads next. 3 months had passed since Dustwater rose up against Claiborne, and Cole's Landing didn't feel like the same lonely patch of earth anymore. The ranch had a heartbeat now, quiet, steady, warm, as if the land finally recognized those who lived on it. Isaiah Cole stood on a ladder beneath the new entryway, carving the final lines into the wooden gate. Ruth and Jonah hovered on each side of him, helping with tiny chisels that barely dented the wood. Still, Isaiah let them try, patient as ever. Lena watched from a few steps away, her chest tightening at the sight. Family, she realized, didn't always form from blood. Sometimes it formed from the hands willing to carve a future for you. Isaiah stepped back, wiping sawdust off his palms. What do you two think? Ruth grinned. Jonah nodded seriously, as if inspecting a great work of art. Carved into the center of the archway was a desert star, the same symbol once tied to tragedy. Now it crowned their door like a blessing. Looks like home, Jonah whispered. Lena pressed a hand over her heart. It does. The wind brushed her hair, carrying the scent of fresh-cut pine. Isaiah glanced her way. His smile was small but uncertain, like a man wanting to step forward but afraid he'd scare off the very thing he cherished. You want to say a few words? He asked. Me? She laughed, shaking her head. I'm no good with speeches. Isaiah shrugged. Just speak honest. Honesty still frightened her. But here, Under this star she once feared, she found the courage. She walked to the gate, Ruth and Jonah trailing her with the river stones they'd chosen from the creek. When we first came here, she began, touching the warm wood, I thought this was just a place to hide, a roof for a few nights. Isaiah watched her like every word mattered. But this ranch, her voice quivered, became something else. It became the first place the kids slept without fear, and the first place I felt seen. Jonah leaned against her leg. Ruth slipped her hand into Lena's. Lena knelt, placing her river stone at the base of the gate. Ruth and Jonah placed theirs beside it. This means we belong here, Ruth whispered. Isaiah's voice softened. Means you'll always find your way back. Lena blinked rapidly, tears threatening. I think we already have. Isaiah stepped forward, rubbing his hands on his jeans, nervous, vulnerable. Lena, he said slowly, you've been here long enough to walk away if you wanted. His voice cracked. So I need to ask, are you staying? Not 'cause you have to, because you want to. Lena swallowed hard, feeling the full weight of the question. She looked at the children, safe at last, then at the man who had fought for them like his soul depended on it. She stepped closer. You once said you'd never let harm touch a child again. Isaiah nodded. I meant every word. I know, she whispered. And this place, it's the safest I've ever been. His breath caught. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver bracelet.